so right now you're just crushing it, doing a million something a year and flipping and wholesaling, but you're not doing that anymore. You
Yeah.
ventured off into commercial. Um, and you said something that was very, and maybe you'll talk about it, but I might circle back around on it later on. But what was the turning point for you to stop, put the brakes on that, or basically just shut that door and move over into commercial?
Yeah. So, I mean, for all the wholesalers and flip business owners out there that have figured this out, good for you. I'm not bashing your business. I certainly know that other people can make it work. But it came a time for us to have the realization that even though we did $3.1 million in gross revenues last year in flips and wholesales, we only kept about 30% of that. And then about half of that, or 40% of that, went to the government and a lot of overhead. And, we didn't have a real sustainable business that was in the seven figures in net profit. And and it was very active, right? I mean, we're constantly hiring for this acquisition role. We're constantly hiring for the disposition role. I mean, it was just churning, right? Both money and employees. Now, I know people have cleared that hurdle, but I would argue that many business owners that are in this space have the same challenges over and over and over again. And we're not talking about it very often, right? The acquisition manager turnover rate is huge and it's tied to marketing dollars, which is scary, right? So this ebb and flow of, hey, I had a great month, and next month, if they don't close, I have a bad month. It didn't create enough consistency and income for me for the lifestyle that I wanted to live for me and my family. And we always knew that we would transition at some point profits from flips into rental property, right? Everybody that's read Rich Dad Poor Dad knows that an active business like flipping is not how you retire, right? It's taking those active funds and putting them into passive income properties that can create a lifestyle of passive wealth creation. We just didn't know how we were going to do it yet. I mean, I thought, hey, we're in New Jersey, we're buying stuff at 60 cents on the dollar. Why not just buy those, do a light rehab, rent them out, and then build 150 unit portfolio like that? Um, that sounded good. And we actually did some exploration on that. And I know guys that have that size portfolio in New Jersey and they do it very well. But I think as a business owner, I'm not lazy. What I like to do is try to find, and I don't think anybody would disagree. I want the highest level of profit margin with the least amount of work, right? And the way for us to do that by buying 100 houses and rehabbing 100 houses and having 100 tenants in a state that's, one, their price per door is very high, so the cash flow is pretty low, and it's not a landlord friendly state, right? Or a blue state. It takes sometimes 6 to 9 months to evict somebody who's not paying their bills here in New Jersey. So I was like, well, maybe this isn't the best idea. And in the mastermind group that we were in, right, I was finding some people in some more tenant friendly or some landlord friendly states saying, hey, what can I get into your properties for? Maybe we'll turnkey those. Maybe we'll build 100. Maybe we'll buy 100 in Mobile, Alabama. Um, but it always came back to management, right? How are we going to manage that property? Who's going to manage it for us? How much does it cost? And again, this time we learned our lesson. We didn't go through this business for 5 years. We said, let's go to the experts. Who's doing this on a big scale? And let's go talk to them. And we found some mentors that were great people, have, 100, 200, $500 million under management. And they all told me the same thing, which was just, just go bigger. Don't do anything less than 100 units. And that was scary for me. I didn't know if I could do that, let alone should do that. I thought a single family property would be the easiest thing for me to do, right? It's like the next step in the process. Um, but it wasn't. I mean, so that was kind of the crux of the decision making, right? We're going to now move from taking this income into more passive things, but now what are those things? And we decided, hey, let's just look at the math. Let's look at the history of what asset classes do the best. Part of our story is my dad passed away 6 years ago. He lost half of his money in the stock market and didn't live long enough to ride it back up. And now I run a Free from Wall Street podcast, and we talk about the volatility of Wall Street versus real estate investment. And the two asset classes that historically have done the best, even in a down market, have been self-storage facilities and multifamily housing, apartment complexes. So those are the only two asset classes that we invest in. And then it was like, okay, so now how do we, right? So we've made the decision that this is what we're going to do. This is the economic metrics behind it. But then how do you get into it? Well, we started calling brokers, right? I'll flip 200 houses this year. Somebody's going to give me a deal. Not necessarily, right? I called them up. I said, hey, we're going to flip 200 houses this year. I'm now looking to get into my first 100-unit apartment complex. What do you got? Okay, so Stephen, how many assets under management do you currently have? Well, none. Okay, have you ever done a Freddie or Fannie Mae non-recourse agency loan? No. Okay, so what makes you think you can buy these? Blind optimism, I suppose.
You were starting all over.
Starting all over. So, so that was kind of the next cycle of like, okay, so now what do we do? Right. So sorry, I kind of went on for a while. Anything you want to unpack from?
Yeah. So one of the things that you said when you kind of were making your retirement speech at the mastermind, and it connected because it was something that my wife and I, we personally felt we've been feeling for a while, and we've been making some changes towards this, but we were ready to make the big change. And that was, you had built this machine that required, and I'm paraphrasing here, you built a machine that, one, you didn't necessarily enjoy because it is stressful, and at the end of the day, the margins are not as high as you would like given all the work. And then two, it wasn't supporting your wealth building goal and your passive income goal, because you're selling off all the assets. You're basically killing all the cows. You're not milking any. And then so my wife and I, we were thinking like,
Yeah.
if we had kept only 25% of the flips that we've done over the past few years, like if we wanted to, we'd never have to work again. And that's a small number, but you can't take that when you're building a machine. You can't take such a large chunk out that needs to go back in to
Right.
feed
You'd
the machine.
cannibalize the business.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So there had to be some evolution in our business. It sounds like you made that in yours, but you essentially, at least from what I understand, kind of burned the boats again, starting all the way over. You're basically a newbie in a completely new industry, learning how to accomplish your new goal, which is building this huge portfolio of commercial assets.
Yeah. And I mean, look, the residential business certainly gave us a lot of credibility in terms of raising capital and finding deals and understanding how to underwrite. So, I believe that God has us in different areas of our lives for different seasons. And that was probably a necessary step. But yeah, I mean, we basically did our first deal in the commercial space, and then 12 months later shut the residential side of the business completely down, right? And it was our most profitable year that we've ever had. We were 10 years into the business, and this was the best year we ever had. And talk about throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We decided we had to do that because, again, split focus and what it would take from me to still at least partially run the other business, the residential side, and try to create the momentum that we need to get into the commercial side. We already did that once before, and we knew that it almost killed both businesses. So we had to make that very difficult decision, which was scary, right? I mean, we built something finally that was making money, and then no, we don't really want to continue on that path. So
it's a risk. I mean, you had a lot of optimism, but you didn't know how it was going to go. I mean, and there's external factors that you just can't control.
Correct.